Former President Jacob Zuma says he won't be starting a new political party. His family is holding a prayer service for him ahead of next week's court appearance.
Ngizama ukuthi ukuzimisela kwami akuyona into encane. Uyabona abantu abathi ngelinye ilanga ngingaphuma mina ngishiya eANC ngenzele enye iqembu kusho ukuthi abakangazi kahle. Ngangidela ngisho umndeni ngidela yonke into ngesizathu esisodwa nje sokufuna ukukhulula abantu abamnyama.
Well, ANC supporters continue to gather around Zuma despite ANC instructions to get behind the new leadership. Political analyst Lukhona Mnguni joins us now via Skype from Durban. And Lukhona, thank you so much for coming through and talking to us. Is there anything even for us to even analyze here, Lukhona, about the holding of a prayer service for the former President Jacob Zuma? Isn't this normal? Are we reading too much into the political significance of it all?
Thulas, I like that you asked that question. I do think at times we find fire even where there's no smoke. I mean, look, for the people of Nkandla and those that supported and continue to support former President Jacob Zuma, it is only normal that they would want to have a homecoming event, welcome him properly. He is now joining those who are not in early retirement but have actually reached their retirement duly. And as you would know, we all do it in our families. From time to time, we hold Thanksgiving events once someone has retired to mark an end of an era in their public life or public service, or even if they were working in the private sector. So in that respect, it is quite expected and quite normal. But of course, we cannot ignore the political undertones that are surrounding that particular event, even whether the people who are promoting a political tone are in the periphery of the event and not necessarily at the high table is something else that we can talk about.
Yeah, in fact, I think you should actually talk about that, because in the build-up we saw confirmation by this group calling itself Mazibuye Masisweni, declaring that they would be seeking to form some kind of a political formation that would demand that Zuma be reinstated to finish off his term. How seriously should we be taking these groups that seem to be rallying around the former president, especially when he makes his court appearances?
Well, the former president has stated categorically today that those that posit he might be leaving the ANC and joining another political party do not know him clearly. And of course, it's expected that people who want to form a political party in KwaZulu-Natal would want to use the name of the former president, hoping that his popularity would attract some level of support to them, one at the level of funding, secondly, of course, in terms of building a constituency. The former president might, in clandestine meetings, endorse those moves in an effort to try and build an alternative constituency, lest within the ANC he no longer finds joy. As we know, we are still to have a provincial conference. We are awaiting what leadership is going to emerge out of that and what type of support is it going to extend to the former president. And so KwaZulu-Natal being his home base, his home turf, and always a province that he returned to, especially when faced with his legal woes. So he does need some level of constituency that's going to continue supporting him, whether financially. Also, we know that his financial ability to fund litigation is still subject to a court ruling, and we are waiting eagerly to hear what is going to eventually come out of that. So there is a political interest he has to make sure that in KwaZulu-Natal he still feels at home, he feels there are constituencies that are behind him. And as I said to us, anyone who wants to form a political party now would free ride on that sense of a wounded and victimized former President Zuma in order to build popularity and support within the province.
Wounded and victimized are the words that you use, that he would perhaps be wanting project himself in that particular way. To what extent is that significant then if we discard the whole issue around the formation of a separate political party? How significant is it within the ANC that perhaps there could be leaders, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, that continue to rally around the former president? Does that necessarily set them against the current leadership of the ANC?
Well, in one way or the other, even the current leadership has hamstrung itself around the bad name of former President Jacob Zuma by virtue of even allowing him to participate actively at their request, even in some of their electioneering campaigns in the build-up. We saw this. He was the only one deployed, if you remember, Thulas, for the voter registration weekend campaign. In the entire of KwaZulu-Natal, there's not a single top 6 leader in the current leadership that came to the province. They entrusted that function to the former President Jacob Zuma, and I think he's still wanting and making sure that he's not even thought of outside of the ANC structures. He was at the ANC's Land Summit in Johannesburg, and he continued to be part of a door-to-door campaign in the recent by-election in the Nkandla local municipality, of course a by-election that they lost to the IFP by 220 votes. But the point to make, Thulas, is that it's not even the fact that we expect a massive revolt from leaders within KwaZulu-Natal imposing former President Jacob Zuma on the current leadership and against it. It's also the current leadership being too unsure what to do with former President Zuma, and by virtue of that being unsure and indecisive, they continue to allow the hanging cloud over him to linger almost over the entire ANC in the process. Of course, if a particular leadership outcome in the upcoming provincial conference favors those that are sympathetic to former President Zuma, we will expect to see them making appearances in their individual capacities as they had agreed in the National Executive Committee then. So in their individual capacities, we expect to see them rallying behind former President Zuma, supporting him, and we can almost make an inference that those who are in government may use and abuse at times their positions to extend patronage to networks that can galvanize resources and support behind former President Jacob Zuma as he appears from time to time before the courts.
Yeah, absolutely. Lukhona Mnguni, it will be absolutely intriguing to watch, especially with that conference coming up and also coinciding, of course, as it does with the court appearance of former President Jacob Zuma. That's political analyst Lukhona Mnguni talking to us there from KwaZulu-Natal. Well,